All right, guys, we're going to jump right into it here. Kind of the Canada warnings Trump about the 51st state remarks. The new, what is his name? The prime minister.
With respect to this. My understanding is that President Macron, for example, is shopping around, don't buy US, buy European military goods, and that they have replacements.
Well, I think, I can tell you what's in the public domain. I can tell you autant aux Canadiens et Canadiennes et qu'aux Britanniques et les Français et les Françaises. Notre histoire commerciale commune a commencé il y a plus de 350 ans ici et s'est développée dans les premiers temps.
Hopefully he doesn't do French this whole entire time.
Et se développe aujourd'hui dans le cadre de nos nouvelles relations commerciales. You know, it's a long history of commercial relationships that extend back over the centuries. We're in Canada House, which is marking its 100th anniversary, so but a fraction of that. And I'm reminded of it because, of course,
I just wanted to remind this guy went to Harvard. The new prime minister of Canada went to Harvard for banking and then Stanford for his master's. So he's very Americanized. He knows what's going on. Here we go.
It looks out on Nelson's column. And you can find another column dedicated to Nelson in Place Jacques Cartier à Montréal. And the flag that flies over that column includes the fleur-de-lis for France, the shamrock for Ireland, the thistle for Scotland, the rose for England, and the white pine for the peuple autochtone du Canada. That is an example of the diversity of Canada. The wonder of Canada is built off of that diversity. And it's through that and through those values that we have built our country. It is on those values that we will make our decisions and build our relationships in this world. So I'm grateful for the welcomes and the constructive discussions both of Prime Minister Starmer and President Macron. And with that, I'd be pleased to take your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
So it's just interesting on the whole U.S., asking Canada to be the 51st state. Here, so it would be, their opinion or how it would be, because you have pride everywhere you go, right? So is it not going to be like, for instance, Dallas Cowboys trying to take over, or let's do it the other way around. It's the Kansas City Chiefs saying, hey, we're going to merge with the Dallas Cowboys, right? That's what's kind of happening here. Both successful, not so much. One's more than the other. Everybody has its little ins and outs and history, but at the end of the day, it's Dallas Cowboys and Kansas City Chiefs merging with the Kansas City Chiefs kind of being over the federal government, being over Canada as a state. What does that look like? Pros and cons. But ultimately, if a Super Bowl is coming and you have Russia taking over Ukraine, right? Think strategically, right? It's all about strategics. Strategic, I don't even know if that's the word, but it's all about these guys. They're doing, like I said, we're more graceful about it, taking over a country or asking another state to join our other states and say, hey, as long as you adhere to the federal government, right? Because the federal government would be over Canada. But ultimately, down the road, the idea is that they join together if anything ever happened, you're kind of going against two major powers that are one. Because Canada is kind of, by itself. But I know in the last administration, a lot of times they were talking about, Texas wanting to separate, different states almost kind of breaking up. So, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to, warfare or future incidents and anything like that, it's going to be an issue. So, that makes sense strategically for everybody, even Canada, because they're just screwed. If anything ever happens, they're going to be asking for help. But at the end of the day, America is just not going to let anybody take over Canada because obviously it's right next to us. All right. Same thing with Mexico. I mean, there's just places that are strategically placed in the world that, hey, they're pretty much protected if anything ever does go down. But why not just join now and have the economies built together? I mean, it's a great idea. Let's see what he says.
Mr. Prime Minister, we will begin with questions from the UK delegation. Over to you for the first question.
Anything could happen now. It's the UK delegation. Please.
Thank
I look
you.
forward. Thank you for coming.
You've seen the economic forecasts. They're not great. Are you certain that Canada can avoid a recession? And are you reopening trade negotiations with the UK?
Well, there's a lot in that question. First off, look, this trade uncertainty, the actual tariffs, but then also the uncertainty around what other trade actions could be taken by the world's largest economy are having an impact. They're having an impact on the United States itself. That impact on the United States will continue to grow. The impact of weakening U.S. economy has an impact on everyone else. But of course, it has a direct impact as well on the affected countries. It's not welcome. What we see is a number of measures that we can take ourselves. We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We don't pretend to control policies of other countries. What we can control is our own domestic economic policy. There's many opportunities in Canada. It's a very strong economy, but it could be much stronger. We could have one Canadian economy instead of 13. We can build the millions of houses that Canadians need. We can diversify our trading relationships. We can build new trading corridors, and we can fully realize what Canada is, which is an energy superpower in both clean and conventional energy, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We are going to get stronger, while those who take trade actions get weaker.
Next question. Welcome back, Lise Doucette of
Come
the BBC.
home. Come home.
Canadian,
Yes.
Brunswicker. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. You came on this first foreign trip making it clear that you needed public support for Canada as it faces not just a trade war. You say you were enthusiastic. Enthusiastic. That was your word today. Enthusiastic support as Canada faces not just a trade war, but threats to its sovereignty. You didn't get that in London. You didn't even get a press conference next to Sir Keir Starmer. Do you regret that? And if you can't take that back to Canada, tell us what is the top thing you achieved in the last 24 hours that you can go back to Canada and that you can say they have our back.
Great to see you, Lise. I'll say a couple of things. As I said when I was sworn in, which was just Friday, so you don't have to go far back in the BBC archives to find the clip. As I said then, we don't need another country to validate our sovereignty. We are sovereign. We don't need praise from another country. We are proud in and of ourselves. I would point out that the Prime Minister made a point of referring to our sovereignty, made a point of referring to our shared sovereign in King Charles III. So if you're looking for some evidence to your question, you have both my statement of Friday and you have that of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Look, this 36 hours, and that is what it is effectively, away from Canada, the focus is on security, deepening security partnerships with France, with the United Kingdom. Those discussions are necessarily sensitive. They're revealed in the full course of time. I'm encouraged by the progress that's been made. Secondly, advancing the support for Ukraine that's very necessary. You may have seen that I have invited President Zelensky to the G7. I look forward to hosting him in Canada in June. There are a host of other measures that we are taking as part of the coalition willing to support that. And it also includes economic opportunities with respect to, for example, artificial intelligence, critical minerals, broadening out existing trade relationships that are functioning quite well, and I mean both CETA with respect to the provisional arrangements around CETA with respect to the European Union, where our trade has grown by more than 60%, and similarly.
Keep in mind that's also is Ukraine going to be around then, or this is just going to be a delayed kind of thing? You know, the ceasefire, all that kind of stuff. Is it just going to go on and on and on? Of course, if that ceases to exist, that whole situation or conflict, here comes probably another Iran, Iraq. Somebody else is going to kick back up again and need support. you know, I'm just curious. It's going to be interesting to see who's going to fire back up. You know, absolutely. Who's going to fire back up and say, I need the attention on me now. I need that support. I need the money. But I think that gravy train is gone. So hopefully nothing else. I mean, it seems like there's always been one event to the next event, to the next event, to the big, something. Why can't there just be nothing going on? No drama, no squeaky wheel that needs greasing kind of thing, let's see.
With the UK. So we're taking back a lot, but we're also taking back a deepening of our core partnerships, which is the objective. And we're 2/3 of the way through. And if you'd like to come to Iqaluit, you will see more. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now begin the Canadian delegation portion. À la délégation canadienne, on va prendre une 20 minutes de questions. C'est à vous.
Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg. There's been a lot of talk on this trip about cooperation in general between Canada and the UK and Canada and France, but there's areas where that cooperation is not happening right now. With the UK, the trade talks, the free trade deal between the two countries, those talks are stalled. And the UK so far has chosen not to retaliate against Trump's tariffs, whereas Canada has retaliated. Did you bring up any specific ways, either on the restarting trade talks or on coordinating retaliation in your meetings today?
Well, look, we take our own decisions with respect to our bilateral trade relationships with the United States. We're not trying to organize a coordinated retaliation. Other countries will take those decisions. For example, what we can do are a series of measures, and there are limits ultimately to this, but there's a series of measures that have maximum impact on the United States and minimum impact on Canada. Those measures that we take might have a different impact on the UK, on France. So look, we don't look for that form of coordinated retaliation. That's not helpful necessarily to those countries, but it's not helpful to the overall process. What we're looking for with respect to the United States is to have a more comprehensive discussion and negotiation of our overall commercial and security relationship. And when the United States is ready to have that conversation, we're more than ready to sit down.
Did you bring up the stalled trade talks in your meetings?
We have a.
But also, it seems like he's doing a Biden thing. Look, hold on, let me think about this, and then he responds. So hopefully, he's not one of those where he just stalls.
Free trade agreement with the United Kingdom, which covers 99% of goods that are traded. We have a free trade agreement with the European Union, which covers 99% of the goods that are traded. There are issues with respect to agriculture. No, it wasn't my top priority today. My top priorities related to security, related to Ukraine, related to issues that we will bring to the table in the G7, specifically in and around AI, critical metals and minerals, and the evolution of the commercial system. Thank you.
Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Vos adversaires à Ottawa vous accusent de n'avoir rien accompli de tangible aujourd'hui avec ce voyage-là et de mener une opération de relations publiques préélectorale. Qu'est-ce que vous leur répondez?
Non, c'est pas correct du tout. Hein. Mes adversaires disent beaucoup de choses tous les jours qui ne sont pas correctes. Non, c'est important. On a eu des discussions très importantes. Très concret.
No idea what he's saying right now. Just talking, he's doing French. I don't know why they wouldn't transcribe that or figure out a way.
La sécurité fondamentale.
Maybe I can fast forward or something.
De la coopération.
Manuel de la défense de notre pays became Prime Minister. So I'm complying with the rules of the Ethics Commissioner, going through the processes and all these things that are necessary. And I will remind you, and I'll remind Canadians again, that the Leader of the Opposition cannot find it. And look, you look at the questions this evening, you look at the nature of the discussions, you look at the nature of discussions I had with the President of France, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The Leader of the Opposition would not be capable of having those discussions because the Leader of Opposition refuses to get his security clearance, something that it took me a few weeks to get. And he has been the Leader of the Opposition for 3 years. So I comply with my responsibilities, I comply with the rules well in advance, and the Leader of the Opposition doesn't take his responsibilities at a time of, well, you should take these responsibilities at any time, but it's particularly remarkable given the stakes in global geopolitics at the moment.
The rules say that those assets should be publicly disclosed within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you sought to avoid.
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
Are you saying you are not open to any conflict of interest?
Yes.
Trump spent most of his life in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict.
This is interesting. I wonder what the turmoil is between their news and their administration. Sounds like there's a little tussle about stuff going on.
And ill will. I have served in the private sector. I have stood up for Canada. I have left my roles in the private sector at a time of crisis for our country. I'm complying with all the rules. Your line of questioning is trying to invent new rules. I'm complying with the rules that Parliament has laid out and the responsibilities of the Ethics Commissioner. And I will continue to comply with those rules.
Bonjour, Émilie Bergeon, la presse canadienne. Monsieur Carney, vous avez dit que vous voulez bâtir des infrastructures énergétiques d'ouest en est et d'est en ouest et vous voulez développer des partenariats énergétiques avec l'Europe. Discuter par exemple de LNG et quelle échéance vous voulez avoir des projets d'infrastructures bâtis au Canada, 2-3 ans?
D'accord. Premièrement, je suis ouvert à des projets ouest à l'est, mais ce n'est pas une décision. Ce n'est pas seulement à moi de faire cette décision. Il faut avoir un projet, comme vous l'avez mentionné, un projet actuel, pas seulement un conseil. Il faut avoir l'appui, le soutien des provinces, le soutien des Premières Nations qui seront été affectées. Alors, il y a beaucoup à faire avant d'avoir un projet actuel qui fonctionne. On verra.
Vous souhaitez diversifier les marchés canadiens, donc comment vous pouvez faire ça rapidement?
Oui, ça prend du temps, ça c'est sûr. Ça prend du temps de faire des grands projets. Et c'est une des raisons pour laquelle il faut identifier les provinces et le fédéral, identifier les projets qui sont dans l'intérêt national. Et ça, ce sera un processus entre nous.
Mr. Prime Minister, you told your defense minister to review the F-35 contracts, and what I want
pretty much on their news media side. So we'll see, there's a little bit of turmoil, and I think the pressure is going to get them with everything that's going on. So we'll see. I don't know.
I want to know is what exactly are you talking about? What's on the table exactly?
Well, the way Cabinet works, or at least the way Cabinet works in my government, is the Defence Minister and I had a conversation. The Defence Minister raised the issue with me. We had a discussion about Canada's options, and the fact is that under the contract, as you may know, after a certain number of purchases, then we have options on subsequent aircrafts. Given what we can do are a series of measures, and there are limits ultimately to this, but there's a series of measures
Discuter, par exemple, de LNG.
Revealed in the full course of time. I'm encouraged by.
So it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot. I mean, the Prime Minister's just kind of doing his thing. Talking about Ukraine talks now. What's that going to look like? Are they going to try to supplement Ukraine? I mean, I'm sure Ukraine will take the extra money. So it looks like, the next one here, Trump signs orders, accepts shopping offer. What is, the Russia thing, kind of what's going on.
Family here. Put your hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I, Howard Lutnick.
I, Howard Lutnick.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
And I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
I will take this obligation.
And they like the job that Elon's doing. He's doing something that a lot of people wouldn't have the courage to do. We want to streamline our country. We want to streamline, because you know why? Because we want our country to survive and thrive. And we're finding billions and billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse. Billions, and I mean numbers like you wouldn't believe. And we haven't even started yet. So it's actually just the opposite. We've polled it, and people are thrilled. They can't even believe it's happening. And it won't affect many people. It only affects the people that get caught.
So coming back to what are the predictions, right? So everybody's talking about Bitcoin. I've seen it now, just kind of floating around. There's been several conversations about Bitcoin hitting like 200,000. I mean, getting crazy because they're looking at the Federal Reserve, they're looking at this, they're looking at that. But the question is, how can the normal investor, how can the normal guy get in on that? And my biggest thing is, I always say, is pay attention. Pay attention. You pay attention, anybody can. Make your own decisions. I come from a background of real estate. A lot of people know that. I don't think in terms of housing's going to go, it's already flopped now, right? You're paying $200,000 for a $100,000 house. So stock right now, everybody is holding their breath. It's going to be kind of a weird fluctuation. People are going to sell their houses like crazy, which is going to bring the house down because there's going to be so many houses for sale. And like I said, on my phone, I'm getting notification after notification from Zillow, price lower, price lower, price lower, price, because I've followed a lot of houses. So it's just going to be interesting to see where it's going to go. And then, just use something typical like the Tesla stock. Well, Tesla was 400, now it's 200. Now it's starting to creep up, and then it goes back down, and then he saves some astronauts, and it creeps right back down. So it keeps going all over the place, right? It keeps going up and down. But ultimately, what's going to happen a year from now? Did something happen else other than Tesla, for instance, that would devalue that whole system? Did it get, other than people just emotionally trading, right? Because that's the biggest thing on stock. It's people get fear, they sell, they buy, right? I would almost say whoever did the protests and stuff like that, it could be their stock person, right? Because it's ultimately, there's always a connection. Always a connection, right? You've heard me say it before. Administrations passed before, like, hey, we're going to get rid of rifles. We're going to get rid of your rifles. Everybody that owns a truck or anything else will run out and buy rifles, and that stock goes through the roof. But they never take your rifles away. But they always threaten. And I say they, Democrats or Republicans, same thing with the, and be 50-50. What does that look like with the stock for TikTok, right? Someone says, hey, I'm going to take TikTok away. Okay, what does everybody do? They go download TikTok. They get on TikTok. They start selling fun. It's like prohibition for liquor back in the day when they did away with liquor. It became that much more popular, coveted. And then when he brings it back, everybody praises. Oh, we love you. Thank you for not taking something that could you, and my question, can you or can you not have a legal right to do something like that? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Do they have a legal right to say, hey, you can't do that here? Why not? It's freedom of choice unless they're doing something shady as hell and they can prove it. But if they were, then why would they allow it? And then just threaten, there's a whiplash act. There's a whiplash action that happens, right? Absolutely. A whiplash. There's positivity, all everybody say, thank you, Trump, for not taking away my income. Because a lot of people make a lot of income on TikTok, So I don't know. See what he says though, moving forward.
Stealing. The waste, fraud, and abuse is at a level like nobody's ever seen. It's been going on for years. And all you have to do is look at the Social Security rolls, look at some of the things, look at where the money is going. The Attorney General's looking into something, environmental protection, $20 billion. And it's out and out fraud. So I think the people are very happy. Yes.
Mr. President, I want to ask you about this week, the Secretary spent 4 hours with the European Union trade representative. The European Union has signaled that they would lower tariffs and do a trade deal with the United States.
Yeah, the European Union wants to come back. They've treated us very badly, and the European Union wants to lower their tariffs because of the fact we were paying fortunate tariffs. We couldn't sell a car there. We couldn't sell our farm products there. They wouldn't take anything. Now all of a sudden they're being very nice, and that's going to happen with a lot of others too. The European Union is wanting to lower its barriers at very low levels. They want to now bring their car number, which was extremely high, down to 2.5%, which is the same thing that we charge. That's reciprocal. See, that's what is happening, reciprocal. And I think it's a big start in the right direction with the European Union.
Mr. President, you called President Zelensky of Ukraine a dictator. Do you think that President Putin of Russia is also a dictator?
I think that President Putin and President Zelensky are going to have to get together because you know what? We want to stop killing millions of people. You have young soldiers being killed. If you saw the pictures that I saw of the battlefield from satellite, you've never seen any pictures like that. Soldiers are being killed by the thousands a week, thousands of soldiers a week. As we speak, they're being killed. That's why I want to see a ceasefire and I want to get the deal done. I think we have a chance to get the deal done. I had to make sure that Russia wanted to do it. It's a war that would have never happened if I was president, but it did happen. So I got stuck with it, and I want to stop people from being killed. It doesn't affect the United States very much. It's on the other side of the ocean. It does affect Europe, and we put in 3 times more money. We're in for 300 billion. They're in for 100 billion. And Europe is also doing it in the form of a loan. Biden just gave them money. There was no loan. There was no security. There was no anything. So we're going to either sign a deal or there's going to be
working hard. He's working super hard to get that deal between Ukraine and Russia. So I'm very curious to see, because here's Zelensky and Putin, they're going back and forth. Is this kind of a delayed, the perception is that they're looking at this, but, does history show that they're actually going to do it, or bombs, or have they stopped dropping? Are they just kind of use it as a strategic position? Because I think Russia wants Ukraine strategically like Trump wants Alaska, right? I mean, it's really strategic in place. So, we'll kind of see how this all plays out. But just trying to go through this information and find out, what is pertinent, what is not, what is strategic. How's that going to affect us? In terms of stock, how is that going to, stock or options or creativity? What can we do to get involved? What can we do? What can we produce either as a group or as an individual, as a U.S. citizen to make that kind of money that you want to make to survive? The other day on the other shows, we had shown that there was I think he was from Iran, but he was a toy maker. Well, he was a toy seller and he was buying all his toys or getting them exported. Well, he's scared, absolutely shitless, right? He's scared because if they do a 200% tariff and that guy gets it for $1 and he sells it for 10, yeah, his it's going to be different. You know, things are going to happen where you have to adjust. Things are going to crash like they should, you know, but the thing is, you can't be, you know, I'm sure everybody remembers that Who Moved My Cheese book. Great book. Who Moved My Cheese? And it's kind of the same thing. People, everything, cheeses are moving around right now. Absolutely. Cheese is moving. And how are you going to move with it? And sometimes if you can pay attention and know exactly what's going to happen, you may have a good opportunity to take advantage of it. So let's just say, I just want to throw that in there, but you know, paying attention when everything's going on, a lot of cheese is moving around. You know, that's how I would say it. Cheese is moving. And then how you gonna do it? How you gonna pay attention to figure out what you know? How can we take advantage of it? Like I tell you right now, there is a lot of folks that's gonna take advantage of that no overtime taxes. That's gonna be huge. There is a lot of people that work a lot of overtime to get things done, especially in law enforcement, firefighting. I mean, the city job stuff. I mean, they're gonna rake it in, and good for them. It should be that way. I just hope that the cities don't try to adapt that and say, well, you're making more money, you're not getting taxed on that, so they're not going to try to, give those raises that are definitely due. So let's see what he says.
There'll be a lot of problems with that, so we're going to sign a deal to get security because we have to do that. We're spending our treasure. They're spending their blood. They are, and they're very brave, and in every way you can imagine. But we are spending our treasure on a country that's very, very far away. And it's okay, but we have to be treated the same as Europe is being treated. Europe gets their money back. Europe is basically giving nothing because they get it back in the form of a loan, and it's a guaranteed loan. We don't get our money back, and we're losing. I mean, we don't want to do that anymore. So we're signing an agreement, hopefully in the next fairly short period of time, that will assure us that we'll get $400 or $500 billion back. We're there for $300 billion. Now, one other thing, Europe is at 100. We're at 300. We think it has to equalize. In other words, they have to come up with more money because it has a big effect in Europe. It doesn't have much of an effect on us because we have a big, beautiful ocean in between. But it does affect, and Biden should have never gotten us into this mess. We had an incompetent president who got us into a mess. But we're going to get you out of it. The same thing in the Middle East. We're going to have some good news in the Middle East. What happened yesterday, the sight of those babies was not acceptable to anybody.
Again, kind of like we talked about, hopefully it's not one of those things where hopefully it's not one of those things where the Ukraine-Russia thing settles down finally, people make progress, and now you've got someone else trying to kick up the dust. In the past, they kick up the dust because they were getting paid. I mean, who else doesn't want billions of dollars and then not have accountability of less than half of it, right? So, I mean, that's insane. So hopefully this time it'll be, hey, if you get into a fight, you're not getting any of our money. You're not going to get any taxpayers' money, so good luck. We're saving up for whatever's coming, at least the economy.
Nobody's seen anything like it.
Mr. President, are you going to Moscow? There's a report out of France that you're going to Moscow on May 9th.
No.
To join President Putin.
I'm not.
And then if I could, sir, just ask you about Kash Patel, who's going to be sworn in soon as your FBI director. Talk to us about your reaction to him getting sworn in and the fact that many agents across the country are concerned that they will be fired en masse for simply just doing their job.
No, I think the agents are very happy about Kash. In fact, the agents led the charge for Kash. One of the reasons I loved Kash and wanted to put him in is because of the respect the agents had for him. I think he'll go down as the best ever at that position. And it turned out he was very easy to get approved. I was not sure. He's a tough guy, strong guy. He has his opinions, and I wasn't sure. He turned out to be he went very smoothly. I don't know if he's in the room now. He's going to be in the room very shortly. Where is he? Hopefully I'm saying the right thing. I can't speak too badly about him. I better be careful. I will say this about Kash, and Howard understands this. One of the reasons that I wanted him is because the agents love this guy, and they respect this guy, and this is what they wanted. And even somebody like Trey Gowdy, who's a very good guy, but known as somewhat of a moderate person. He came out with a statement that was so incredible. He said, Cash is an incredible person. People don't realize it. When he said that, there was no doubt left. It was really a big statement made by somebody that's respected and on the model.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Thank you very much. Today I'm honored to swear in our next Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Howard Lutnick. I've known him a long time.
It's repeating, so let's get out of that. Let's see. Okay, so Dave Ramsey, he's got some opinions going on right now. Let's see what he said. Just a reminder, right now is the worst time to buy a house ever. Does not matter what's going on. Do not buy a doubled house, because why would you spend $200,000 on a $100,000 house? Even if the interest rate drops, wait until everybody starts sweating, because they're holding the bag, right? There's a lot of people who bought a lot of expensive houses thinking, oh, I'm going to flip it for, $400,000. It's a $200,000 house. They're going to get nervous, and you're going to see that change go down. And there's going to be a little bit of a crisis. It's going to start selling like crazy. And then there's going to be, people will start buying and things will start getting crazy. And then that'll come back up. But again, a lot of guys right now are going, hey, sell those houses. I'm talking about the big dogs. The big dogs are selling those houses right now, and they're going to put it into the stock market because it's a coming, because it's all about the investment at the worst time for an investor. I remember going into a bank saying, hey, I really want to buy this commercial property. And they're like, well, commercial property is horrible right now. Well, that's exactly the point. You want a commercial property when it's absolutely worthless. Then you maintain that property until you get another year or two. And then all of a sudden it doubles and triples, right? That's the whole idea. It's like you go into, I want to buy that stock. Why would you buy a stock or a house at the peak, a dollar amount, right? Why would anybody do that? It's like it's literally against investor rules. You want the lowest stock. You want the lowest housing. Just looking at it yourself, housing is the highest it's ever been right now. Highest interest rate. They could do a 1% interest rate, and you would be crazy to go out there and buy a house. You're smart to refinance the house you have, but in doing so, refinance and hold. Wait until that stock market comes back around, because what's happening is they're going to start fighting. It's going to be a big fight. All the big dogs are going to sell their house. They're going to sell, because they're going to be holding the bag with all this overpriced real estate. Then when they sell it, guess what they're going to do? They're going to put it all into stock market, because then here comes that wave, right? We already kind of made that comment. Like, there's most investors just think like surfers on the beach. They see that wave, they swim out there, they get on it, they go back to the shore. They see another wave, they swim back out. It's the same thing over and over and over again. But you don't want to get caught in that wave. Don't be distracted for low interest rates. Okay, if you have a house, my God, when it hits 4, refinance your house. Refinance any investments or anything like that. But be careful, because a lot of times, what banks will do is they'll change the deal. Okay, now, we're not going to do a 30. We're going to do, they're trying to convince you to a 15 or a 10, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I want a 30 rate locked in. You can't ever touch it. You can't readjust. You can't do anything. So be careful when you do refinance that you don't get suckered into a bad deal that's good for the bank, right? Good for the bank, bad for you. So just keep that in mind, when you're looking at those kinds of things. Let's see what he said. I keep coming in. It's already at its peak. You can't, you have that $400,000 house that's $200,000, then they raise wood. What are you going to do? Right? It's $500,000. It doesn't matter. At some point, please do that, because everything will come crashing down. And like I said, it has to have the crash. Having it crash is actually needed. Once the crash happens, everything will adjust, at least as it should. But again, everybody dumps their property and jumps into the stock market. Where are you going to be left holding the bag? So just keep in mind, hold, do not buy properties, even if it goes down to 1% interest rate. Let it just simmer you know, and like I said, a new person coming in go, oh yeah, you know, it looks like all houses are expensive, so I'll just buy the house. Well, yeah, that's that real estate investor dumping his house on you so he can go put it into real estate or put it into the stock market. So don't be that sucker. That's totally a fallacy. Everybody knows he's a real estate guy. Okay. He does not benefit if real estate crashes. Well, I mean, that's a fallacy too. He does because he'll buy at the low and sell at the high and vice versa. Right. So, but everybody knows he's a real estate guy. Everybody has the faith that, hey, the idea that, yes, he's literally trying to make things better instead of being in his dungeon and not having interviews and like walking into walls and speaking, you know, gibberish. So, you know, I to say that he started the positivity, at least you can say he's the positive pole that everybody's like, hey, things are going to get better, always going to get better. So I disagree. And I disagree because, like you said, and I repeated this already, you overpaid for a property, or they got a lot of landlords putting up their properties for $200,000 for a $100,000 house. Yeah, I'm still not going to buy that $200,000 house. I'm not going to do it. I don't care if they go down to 1%. There's going to be a percentage of people that will buy that house because they go, ooh, the percentage is the best it can, so let me go overspend. And just dump a ton of money, and he's going to be holding that bag, even at 1%. It's overpriced, buddy. You know, if something happens, because the real estate market, the whole idea is you can buy a house, it holds its value, and then it goes up in value at some point. Well, it went into the red, going up in value. So even if it comes down, there's going to be some newbies coming out, you know, college. Oh, I just want a house. I don't want an apartment, you know, and they're going to buy these houses. They're going to be way overpriced. Even if it goes, like I said, 1%, you know, yeah, they want it to be good because his business is real estate, right? He wants it to be good because good, he presents it as, hey, this is going to be their best real estate. It's fall. You know, people are going to be selling like crazy and buying like crazy. Yeah, they're going to be buying overpriced houses that he's selling. And that's how you got to look at it. He's going to be selling you the overpriced houses, and he's going to have a grin on his face as he goes and dumps it into the real stock market, you know, and then the pendulum will swing again. It's usually the two primaries between real estate and between stock. And if some of these huge capital companies, you jump back and forth. And you've heard of these huge companies that they have millions of rentals, right? Where do they get all this money? You're telling me somebody just randomly says, hey, I want 1 million houses, and I can go to the bank and I'll loan that? Why can't anybody else do that? You know, it may be funded by other things, and I don't know. I know that's more of a Warren Buffett style, because he made it a couple of comments in the past about that, where being in real estate, or being, you know, if he could just go buy endless houses and put them up for rent, that would be the greatest thing ever. Yeah, if you buy at the right price and you have somebody to rent that property at a good price that doesn't leave and come and go and then causes that problem. And that's what happened. You know, you go back to the California, the 08, overpriced, free flowing. They were giving more loans away to anybody at any price, really. And then, yeah, it got them, but it got them because they were giving the loans out to anybody. And then as time, people were getting greedier and greedier and greedier. And then all of a sudden it collapsed. So what do we have now? We have Formula One. We got overpriced houses, right? And right now it's stagnant. People are like, I'm not going to buy that house. But what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen when it drops? And as the bank starts dropping it more and more, because they want loans. Yeah, interest rate is high, you know, because they're trying to make up for this. But as it goes down, then the pendulum swings back around again, right? The pendulum will swing for the housing market. So it's just interesting seeing his perception, because remember, he's a massive landlord. He owns tons of property. He wants real estate to come back. Even if it comes down to 1%, they're still overpriced houses, right? So if they're overpriced houses, then people get excited. Oh, it's 1% interest. Let's go buy that $200,000 house. It's $100,000. You're still holding the bag. It's still overpriced. So my thing is, put into the stock market, not housing. let people get crazy. Let these guys sell their overpriced houses to you or to other people, and let the crash is going to come, because they're going to realize, hey, you can't do that. Like, it's just not going to work that way. So let's see what he says.
Yeah,
That's dumb to wait for the. I remember where he's coming from. Okay, massive, paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for a house because he's a good real estate guy, but he's also selling overpriced real estate to people that are going to buy his real estate. So you're going to buy an overpriced house and the percentage is too high. How does that work? Who does that benefit? He doesn't care. You'll get left holding the bag. So just keep that in mind. I don't care if it comes down to 1%. Don't buy. Do not buy. Don't do it. Don't do it. I would say put your money in real stock market, because the pendulum is swinging. You know, stock market will go up. Everybody's got a good attitude. Things with tariffs and stuff like that. Yeah, but in less than a year, you'll look back and you heard it right here. Elon's is going to be over 400, 500 in a year. In a year. Saving astronauts going to Mars, and cutting funds and stuff like that. Yeah, you're telling me that the market is so volatile, someone can throw a couple of fire things on a couple of the cars, and all of a sudden he goes down in evaluation like $200. It would be $200 on a stock. If you've got a lot of money in the stock market, nothing's changed with his evaluation for his company. Maybe some fear and then emotional spending or selling on the stock. So I don't know. Let's see what he says. Like I said, I disagree with him. Don't buy, because he's hoping that people buy at his ridiculous prices. Yeah, and like it's like that positive slingshot. Goes down in interest, and even though it's a $400,000 one bedroom, hey, they'll still buy. No, not if they're not stupid. Not if they're not stupid. The real estate market side, if that comes down in interest, refinance your house. Don't go out and buy an overpriced house. Don't do it, because that's what he's wanting. This guy, Dave Ramsey, his big deal is he's a real estate mogul. He's in the business of selling overpriced houses, right? So don't do it. Even if it goes to 1 or 2%, don't buy overpriced houses. Wait until they start to sweat. Because like I said, on Zillow right now, I'm getting notification after notification how people are lowering their prices on their properties. So what does that mean for you? Hold, refinance at the bottom, and then maybe even look at commercial and stock market. Because stock market right now, there's a lot of, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I'm telling you, these guys like Dave Ramsey, they're dumping their expensive houses on his platform saying, oh yeah, buy, it's okay, good. Selling the positive energy for real estate, that's great if it wasn't overpriced. That's great if there's competition and it goes back down to under at least fair market value. And you can go on to your product, like you can go look and see how much is this house worth 5 years ago. And then if you can get that price, hey, you did a good deal. Dude, it skyrocketed the last 5 years. So just don't fall into that trap. Just remember that. You'll see what he said. Answer a question, Facebook. So your market value on your house, what I would say is, you can look back probably 4 years ago. Okay. Give me a second. It's evading me. It's it's like I can't think of it right now. It's the appraisal on your house that the government puts on it to charge you taxes. Okay. I'll have to look at my phone. I got to look it up real quick, because I'm going to get all, because I know I've done it. I've used it before. But it's like the city appraisal. So you look at your city appraisal side and you go, okay, how do I know what fair market value is? I used to do an appraisal. Like if you find a house, you take the last 3 of taxes of what the city said it was worth, then you deduct 20% from that, and that's your offer. But because of the craziness that has happened with COVID, people have tripled. The government has tripled its valuation on everybody's house. Okay, and you're having to pay tax on that, right? It's an ego thing to say, hey, my house is, say I bought it for 100,000. The government says, oh, it's worth 200. That sounds cool, but when you're paying that tax bill that's doubled now, right? You can't get out of that. It's very rare that it goes down in value. Let me see how it's, give me a second. It's not the appraiser side. It's the, man, I have to look at my phone because it's going to drive me crazy if I don't get that wording here. Hold on a second. Let me look at it. Give me 2 seconds. No, that's not it. That's it. Okay, so it's the county assessor. I should know better than that. I was like, oh, man, it's been so long because right now I haven't been looking. I haven't looked at properties because it's so ridiculous, right? Why would you even look at a house right now? Hold on. Sorry about the mix up here. There we go. There we go. So it's the county assessor, okay? A county assessor. Just go to the county, whatever county you're in. Let's see if it's so. Let's do. Let's give me a good one. See, there's the assessor. I'm just trying to find a good one. See, search property. Let's see if I can just come up with one. 15 Southwest 11. I'll just make one up. Okay. Probably give me a hard time because it's probably not. Let's think of one here. Let's do this. Submit. There's got to be a bunch of them. Okay, so Midwest City. Let's look up. I'm just looking up a random one. Okay, so everybody can see this. Let me make sure everybody can see this here. Okay, so looking at the assessor site, a lot of people don't understand this. You go to the county that you're in. The counties change from the assessor site. It's not like Oklahoma assessor. Okay, you have to go to the county that you're in, go to that assessor site, and you go, okay, let's look at this and see what it says. This person because at the very top it says market value. Okay, that's what the government is saying that your house is worth. Okay, there's an appraiser that comes out every single year about the summertime that they will appraise your house, right? So the appraiser here, so let's go to 20. Okay, so this guy's house in 2020, I don't know if you can see that. In 2020, this dude's house was worth $70,000. Okay, and right here, that's the tax evaluation. Estimated taxes a year, you're paying $945. Okay, in 2024, because remember, we haven't got to summertime yet. Summertime is when they reevaluate your house again. Last year, 2024, this dude's house is now pretty much $120,000. I mean, damn near doubled, right? Paying $1,200 in taxes. So it went from $945, $950 to $1,200. So a lot of times, like, well, how do I know a good evaluation? I would do pre-COVID. So let's go back and see if it gives me pre-COVID numbers. Like, so 2019, 69. Okay, 2015, 60. So it literally doubled in 10 years. Okay, so if we're thinking about this, okay, just for a second, if you buy a house at a good deal, in 10 years, it'll double. That's just looking at this house per se, that's what happens to it. Now, as the city starts having issues with resources from a house or resources from economy or resources, yes, the government got a huge raise just by all the craziness with COVID and everything they shut down on it. Yeah, everything's scarce, and oh my God, like now they get to double their taxes on houses. You think how many houses are in the country? That is a ton of money now the bank has, which, don't get me wrong, now Trump's cutting even more, and there's other things going on. So this is not going to lower overnight. It's not going to lower in 4 years. That it may drop 2,000 per year. So there's not a major change in this evaluation. So just when you're looking at that, that's how a lot of times when I was looking at a house, I would go, okay, the last 3 years, then take that and then deduct 20% because that's usually, banks want 20% down, right? And that's what you look at. Okay, so if I can get it for that price under 20%, so now we're at 50,000. There's a good chance you can get that house without having to pay any money down, right? That's how the real estate guy does it. Because then you're hoping that there's a percentage that they just need to dump that house, for whatever reason. You don't want somebody that's just gung-ho and doesn't really care. You want the house that, hey, they got to sell because maybe grandma died and, they're just they don't want to deal with it anymore. That's the good percentage, right? That's the house you want as an investor, But that's why I'm saying, like, if you go to any houses right now, let's go back to what it is. Okay, 119. That house it was 5 years ago, it was $70,000. So now I go back to 70, go back 3 more years and take 20% off that. Just a way of doing it. That's why real estate is not the way to go, because to hold an evaluation of 120 as a real estate investor, you're going to have to rent that as such. And I mean, there's just a lot of people not going to do it. There's no way they can double their rent and nothing's changed in their pay, right? That's fair to say. So anyway, I went off on a rant there on that, but let's see what Dave Ramsey says. Okay, so just like he said, there's 0 people looking at it. You know why? Because it's overpriced, Mr. Ramsey. Nobody's going to pay you double for it. Nobody's going to pay it. Go back 6 years and have that price evaluation, and it may fly off the market. But he's literally suffering from, well, the government says it's worth, 3 times what I bought it for. Because remember, he probably bought it 20 years ago. Yeah, he's licking his chops. He's licking his chops, hoping that somebody buys it. Because what do you think he's going to do? He's not going to reinvest it in property. He won't. He'll reinvest it into stock. And as that stock keeps going down, baby down. As there was Grant Cardone interview the other day talking about that. He was like, build, baby, build. Sure. For him, right? Because he's using other people's money to build this stuff. But at the end of the day, they're counting on the fact that, hey, I'm going to be able to sell this double. It's not going to happen. You see, because just like this guy, he's like, well, nobody's looking at the houses. Yeah, because you got to change your price. Okay, change your price, and they'll start to fly off the shelf. Right now, he's selling Cokes for $10, and nobody's dumb enough. Even if they say, hey, I'll lower your taxes on that $10, it does not matter, right? As inflation or your interest rate or whatever, I don't care what you tax me on it. I just don't want to pay $10 for it.
Else.
Nine team members will egress from the Dragon spacecraft. Now, here on your screen, we can see dolphins, actually, who want to come and play with Dragon. Now, one of the fast boats there in place, working to assist the recovery team member. It's incredible. I just love these views. We really see them even better in daytime, but just seeing the recovery team work in tandem to step through each step. To step through each operation. Obviously they're getting quick assists from the honorary part of the recovery team, those dolphins in the water there. Now, the recovery team member that is crawling around the Dragon spacecraft. Earlier, we saw a view where it was like a spider monkey pose. We can see that individual now standing in the bucket where the main parachutes were stored while Dragon was on orbit. Obviously, those main parachutes were utilized for splashdown today. They were deployed and cut from the Dragon capsule, and one of the other fast boats of the recovery team working to pull those out of the water. Now, the recovery team member that is there working on top of the Dragon capsule, earlier we saw that person performing safety checks. Now we can see some harnessing being placed around the capsule. This harnessing is what will be used to lift the Dragon capsule out of the water and onto the recovery vessel. Wow, we got a cute little pod of dolphins. It wasn't just one or two.
I mean, that water access the crew and help get them out of the spacecraft.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Safety is, once again, top priority here, and removing those footrests from all 4 seats will be helpful as a recovery, as a SpaceX recovery team member will actually go into the capsule, into Dragon Freedom to help the crew members unbuckle and stand up, and essentially will also
speed it along. Here we go.
And there you have it. The side hatch is open for the first time since September.
We can see some of the protective equipment there that was brought into frame that will help protect the edge of the side hatch, one from any potential damage. Oh, we can see the recovery crew member there taking photos of the side hatch seal. This is part of the standard operation for recovery. These photos will get saved into our procedure. We'll then install that protective frame around the side hatch. This helps to ensure that the side hatch itself, the edges of it incur no damage while crew members are coming out from the spacecraft. If you missed it, there was also a recovery team member that went inside. So there are now 5 people on board the Dragon spacecraft.
And if you are just joining us, it has not yet even been an hour since Crew 9 splashed down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time. The crew is now on board the recovery vessel Megan, and the hatch is open. The next major milestone that we'll see is when the crew will actually egress or exit the spacecraft. But before that, they'll continue to, the recovery personnel rather, will continue to install that protective.
So I guess they don't actually show them getting out of the aircraft. So I don't know what's up with that. I don't know why they did. Maybe there's like some reason, in case, you know, something going on, top secret or something. I don't know. Who knows? Okay, let's go back over to Trump. Some craziness going on there.
And I went into show business. I had one of the most. There was a general next to him. There was a colonel. There was a drill sergeant, a master sergeant. They were all like people. I could make a movie right now. I'd have the best looking people ever. And they were great. And then I went in and, sir, would you like to rest before the meeting? No, I don't want to rest. I don't want to rest. I've been resting on the plane, other than the last few moments, which were quite harrowing. And I said, I don't want to rest. He was thinking about Biden in advance, you know. Biden would have gone there, he would have rested for days. And then they wouldn't have had a meeting. He'd just go home. No, I said, I don't want to rest. I don't want to rest at all. I want to go. So we went into this like bunker, and we had a lot of very good, talented people. And that's when I asked him. I said, you know, I'm hearing it's going to take a long time. No, that's not right, sir. It's not going to take a long time. We'll have it done in 4 weeks. I said, how can you say 4 weeks when in Washington they said 4 years? He said, 4 weeks, sir. We'll hit them left, we'll hit them right, we'll hit them up the center, we'll hit them underground and overground, we'll knock the hell out of them, sir. And I said, why is it that they said so long? He said, because they wouldn't let us fight. And we're very far away. They want us to fight for this, from this airport. We're very, very far away, sir. And they want us to fight here. We have many substations out, sub-airports, they call them, remote airports, where they build them in the sand. And we have many of them, and I'd use them all, sir. And I would hit them so hard from so many different directions. I said, well, what do you think? He said, you just let me know. And I called him back, and I said, go ahead and do it. Are you sure you can do this, General? I said, yes, sir. And he did it actually in 3 weeks. It was over 100% of people that are really hurting the Middle East, hurting the world. And it was done. And we have, I'm telling you, we have the greatest military in the world, but you have to use the right people. But there's nothing like what they were able to do in that case and in other cases wherever I gave them something. It was done incredibly well, and you know many of the instances because it's been well reported. But we've also required, and so we have a country that's a great country. It's a strong country, but it's a country that's just now gaining its respect back to the levels that it should have never lost. We were being laughed at by the entire world, but we're not being laughed at anymore. But we've also required that all federal employees must once again show up to work. It's a new phenomenon, you know, since COVID. Show up to work in person like the rest of us. So, I mean, it doesn't work.
Welcome to the ARC Venture Fund. To date, to get very...
Watch some of the big business leaders saying we absolutely are going back. You can't work at home. They're not working. They're playing tennis, they're playing golf, or they have other jobs. But they're not working, or they're certainly not working hard. You could never build a company or a country with that. So we have a very strong policy, and if they don't show up to work, they get fired. And we're trying to make our government smaller but much stronger. And we have tremendous bureaucracy, but it's happening. A lot of people are leaving, and in some cases leaving with pretty good offers. You know, you're paid 7 or 8 months and go out, find a job. But some of these people had jobs. They were actually working for us, but they also had other jobs. And those people, in theory, they have problems. I don't know if we're going to do anything about that. So we have other things to do, but they were working other jobs instead of working for us. So they were staying home working, but they were working other jobs.
So I'm going to add, any government job, if they're double dipping, they fire your ass in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Average, I think we looked it up a couple of shows ago. The average federal worker is anywhere from like $110,000 to $120,000 a year. So with that said, they're not going to do anything about it. I would hope that, you know, I mean, I guess you don't file charges, you just fire them, but you get fired from a federal job for double dipping, you know, that, I mean, that's kind of crazy. It is kind of crazy to think, you know, they just did show up for years and then go get another job or do whatever, you know, can they not have them pay that back? You know, can they not do something similar to that? You know, that's kind of crazy because everybody else seems to have that high accountability. Absolutely. Right. So, you know, federal government should be higher than most.
Payments on mortgages, credit cards, car loans, and much higher stock markets. I think the stock market's going to be great. In other words, we will rapidly grow our economy by dramatically shrinking the federal government, and we have to do it. I'm also taking fast action to end the radical left's nation-wrecking crusade against oil and natural gas. Over the past 4 years, the Biden administration cut the number of new oil leases and gas leases by 95%. They slowed new pipeline. I mean, look at the, Dakota Access, they wanted that one knocked out. The Keystone Pipeline, they wanted that one knocked out. They ended the Keystone. We got the Dakota Access done, but it wasn't easy after they tried to stop it. They slowed new oil and gas pipeline construction to virtually a halt. They shut down 38% of active oil and gas rigs in the United States, but they love the wind turbines. They go round and round and round, and if the wind doesn't blow, they got problems. They kill all the birds, they ruin the sight lines, they ruin the plains and the beautiful areas of our country, including the oceans, the lakes. They close more than 50
yourself, particularly in Oklahoma, they had some major dust storms. I'm talking like ridiculous dust storms, like cows. There's no tornado, but their hell is like cows flying through the airs kind of thing. So I'm just really curious what happened. How much power did those suckers produce over this last couple of weeks? We got totally demolished by wind. So did it break them, or did they just like power up everything for the next couple of years? I don't know.
50 power plants, all causing energy prices to skyrocket. You saw that happen. That's what caused inflation. Pretty easy. These policies were so destructive that despite draining nearly 40% of U.S. strategic petroleum reserve meant for emergencies, it was meant for emergencies. It wasn't meant for getting a price of gasoline down so that you can win an election. It didn't work for winning the election. Actually, there's so many people that are driving that it's a very small number, just had a very small effect, but in the meantime, it takes it down. We'll fill it up fast, but it's at the lowest level. When we made the transition, it was at the lowest level in history ever recorded. It's the lowest level. Nobody's ever seen it that way. They put it all out because they thought they could keep gasoline prices down a little bit, just go past the election, and after that, they didn't care. And it didn't work because they didn't get elected. I got elected. But the price of gasoline still rose over 35%, and in some cases, at some periods, it was 100% and 125% during certain periods of time. Under the Trump administration, we have implemented a very different plan. You probably heard of it. It's called Drill, Baby, Drill. And we're doing it. The world runs on low-cost energy, and energy-producing nations like us have nothing to apologize for. We have more energy than any other nation in the world, and we're going to use it. And we're going to use it on AI plants. I was telling some of the people that came in that, they're very interested. Everybody's talking about AI. I hope you're right. I don't know. Who knows? But Elon, are they right? Are they right in going all? They are all in for AI. But the problem is, to do it, just in our country, you need twice the electricity just to open up and be the top of AI. You need twice the electricity that we have right now in the entire country. If you take all of the electricity, you need more than twice. You need double what we have right now just to fuel this new industry that's growing. I was amazed when I heard that number. And they all said, how can we do this? Because, in China and various other places, you can probably get it with the shake of a hand. But in our country, you can't. But now you can, because I'm declaring a national emergency in order to get fast approvals. And we're going to have, if you build a plant, you're able to build an electric generating facility right next to your plant. So you'll be making your own. You won't have to count on utilities. You won't.
It's not crafty. It's your craft.
Approved so fast, your head will spin. And we're going to get that whole industry started, and we're going to be the head of it. We're leading right now. We have the greatest brain.
That would be a good question in terms of investment. They're saying pretty much they have to double down in the whole infrastructure of electricity because of AI. Like, they're doubling down as a government. We are doubling down. So what is that going to look like if the government's doubling down on electricity, or we need double the electricity? Is there stocks in OG&E? That's something I don't know. I'm going to definitely look it up for next show. Is there some type of power grid you can invest in when it comes to particularly electricity? Elon's got that solar city, but that's solar energy. That's not consistent energy, where they would have to power AI facilities or something like that, the infrastructure. So I don't know. Let's see what happens. They keep talking about it, but again, pay attention to what they're doing, because that could be a thing coming, right? They're saying we have to have double to be the leader in AI, and they're looking at double, and he's suggesting that they're putting a ton of money into it. So what does that look like? I don't know.
Find the bodies on trees on the side of a tree. I said, I think we'll pass on that one, right? We're not going to want that one. But you never know. Maybe someday it'll be good, but it doesn't sound like it's off to a good start. I repealed the last administration's very destructive natural gas export ban. And last week we approved our first new liquefied natural gas export license, and we have literally hundreds of people that want to export. I recently met with the Japanese Prime Minister, Shiba, to discuss large increases in American oil and gas exports. They want it so badly. They said we went to the Biden administration, they wouldn't sell it. They wouldn't sell it. Nobody knows what.
Okay, because I used to have a couple of friends that were into oil and gas, and they would drop them down on me, and I have them in my phone, but I have to look it up. But if that's the case, that means oil and gas is going to skyrocket as well because they're doubling down and building, right? There's going to be an extension, right? At some point, there's going to be an extension of oil and gas, but what does that look like? You know, which companies are mainly exported and then versus local, right? That would be something to know. Hey, you know, this is a major exporter, and their stock market's going to go crazy for the next 3 to 4 years. That would be the stock to look at. You know, I don't have any per se stock in that or know any of any particular, but that would be something to look at. You know, because they're going to double down, and I think the government's going to help them do it.
Well, Biden didn't know why either. They asked him, I don't know. He wanted, they did, oh, I didn't know that. But we're going to sell it, and the new project in Alaska is going to feed all of Asia. We're going to take care of all of Asia. We have so much oil and gas, like very few people, like very few countries have, like really actually no country has. I also met with Prime Minister Modi of India, who wants to greatly expand India's purchase of American energy, and my administration has also launched the most aggressive deregulation program of any nation in history. Under my executive order, for every one new regulation added, 10 old regulations have to be eliminated. And you know, in our first term, which was actually an incredible success, we had the greatest economy in history until COVID, and even after that, we did great. The stock market was higher. If you think of it, it was higher after the fact. After we went through that whole thing, it was higher than it was just prior to COVID coming in, which is a pretty amazing thing. But we did a great job on that, but it was a terrible thing for the world. The whole world suffered. It suffered terribly, including China, including other countries. It was a terrible period of time. But despite that, we did well. But we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I think this time we're going to do even better. We were artificially hurt by COVID. We had to focus on that instead of focusing on, but just prior to COVID coming in, there's never been anything like what we did, what we achieved. And even after, we did very well, and especially considering what all of us had to do with COVID. Some nations were hit so badly, it's just unbelievable what happened to them. As part of our effort, I've signed executive orders to keep the United States at the forefront of artificial intelligence and to end Joe Biden's war on Bitcoin and crypto. We ended that war totally. That war is over. They were very hostile toward them until the very end, just because there's so many people on Bitcoin and crypto that just before the end, the SEC came out and they were being very nice. I was so nice to people because so many people were being indicted for no reason whatsoever. Very political group of people. That's all they did was they liked indicting people, but they were being indicted, and many of those indictments were dropped just before the election because they said, wait a minute, there's 100 million, 125 million people using this, and they didn't want to have, you know, all these people being voted against. But by the time they did that, it was too late. We had that vote entirely, I think. I think anybody smart that believed in that, and there are a lot of people believing it, anybody that was smart voted for Trump. And they pulled the indictments, and I see people that were indicted. I said, I saved your life. I saved your life. Because if they thought that, they actually thought that I was doing it, they said, why is Trump doing it? Is he doing it for political reasons? I don't do anything for political reasons. I do what's right. I want to be in the forefront of every industry. So I'll be working with the Republican Congress to pass the largest tax cuts in American history, and that includes our.
Stop letting them increase your rates. I used to let them raise my car insurance every year until I found this huge loophole.
See, who can argue with that?
Taxes for all domestic.
Who can argue with the tax cuts? Great. That's awesome. Keep on cutting. Let's do it. You know, hopefully everything around us maintains what it should, but let's do it.
Producers of oil and gas and just about everything else that they produce. In my first term, I brought the business tax down from around 40% to 21%, which everybody said was an impossible thing to do. I cut it from 40. It actually was state and city was much higher than 40, but I got it down to 21%, and now I'm bringing it down to a goal of 15%, but only if you make your product in America. In other words, you're going to be at 21%, but if you make your product in America, you're going to go from 21 to 15. If you don't, you're going to pay 21%, which is still lower than anything. So guys like Elon are going to come and make his great cars in the United States. There are a lot of people will. A lot of people are calling. A lot of car companies are calling. They called me, three of the majors. They called and they said, we're looking all over the place. We want to be there. I'm going to be announcing tariffs on cars and semiconductors and chips and pharmaceuticals, drugs and pharmaceuticals and lumber probably and some other things over the next month or sooner. And
so if I manufacture T-shirts, say merchandise, do I get the 15%? Right? Is it just on that product? Or is it the whole business itself? If I develop, if I get if I get some type of scanner or printer and I develop something, does that give me the full ability to go down to 15% if I develop that product? Because he's saying right now businesses have a 21%, right? So we went to 40 tax rate as a business to 21% tax rate, but he's saying if you develop your product in the United States, it'll go down to 15. So does that mean like that'll qualify if I make a T-shirt like merchandise? If I go to get like a scan printer or something like that, and I scan, little pencil products, do I get the full amount, of deduction? So it's just something. It's something to think about when you're looking at the loopholes of everybody what they're doing. So again, this is Trump just talking about the impact of everything he's doing.
Monetary tariffs are very, very tough. But if you take a look at that, it's a very unfair situation. And the VAT tax is similar to the tariff. Around the world, I'm moving quickly to end wars, settle conflicts, and restore the planet to peace. I want peace, and I don't want to see everybody being killed. And you take a look at the death in the Middle East and the death that's taking place between Russia and Ukraine. It's been going on, and we're going to end it. There's no profit for anyone in having World War III, and you're not so far away from it. I'll tell you right now, you're not so far away. If we would have had this administration for another year, you would have been in World War III, and now it's not going to happen. In the Middle East, I've restored my policy of maximum pressure on Iran, designed to bring peace.
See if he'll settle the Ukraine-Russian war, but then, Iraq, they're going to start shaking up again. They're going to start creating problems. They're going to want to say, hey, I want some more money. I'd like to have a bunch of money donated and I'll only have half accountability, but I don't think they're going to get sucked into that again. Absolutely not. So let's see. I don't know.
And we've designated the Houthis a terrorist organization. They're, destroying shipping lanes all over the place. They're making it very hard for people to get their product delivered. They're making it very difficult, but we'll take care of that situation. And we've secured a ceasefire in Gaza, and we're bringing in the hostages, and we're bringing them home to their families. Some of them are in pretty bad shape, I have to tell you. To end the horrible war in Ukraine, I've spoken with President Putin and President Zelensky, and our teams began negotiations this week in Saudi Arabia. I want to thank Saudi Arabia for that. That was so great. Yeah. And I want to thank, in particular, we have so many of the people, Yasser, Mohammed, all of the people, but in particular, we have to thank Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for hosting these historic talks. And talks that went very, very well. Steve was there, Steve Witkoff was there, and Michael was there, Michael Waltz and others, and they really went well. It's a big step. We got to get that war over with. You have to see the people that are dying. I look at the pictures, the satellite pictures of the field. It's a level field. And it looks like a modern-day version of Gettysburg, and you know what that means. It is just carnage. It's horrible. And, you know, it's not American soldiers. It's not even soldiers from the Middle East in the case of Ukraine, Russia, but it's people. It's young people from Russia and Ukraine mostly that are just being decimated. It's flat fields. And a bullet goes, and a bullet only stops when it hits somebody. And the level of people being killed in that battle, soldiers, young soldiers, in some cases old soldiers, because they're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers, one case. But think of it, a modestly successful comedian, President Zelensky, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that basically couldn't be won, that never had to start and never would have started if I was president, not even a chance. And it didn't start for 4 years, never would have started. But a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, will never be able to settle. They'll never settle that war without our involvement. That's why they did such a great job this weekend. That's why Saudi Arabia did such a great job this weekend in hosting. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed. They get their money back. It's a form of a loan. Nobody knows that. I know that. I said, why isn't somebody saying, you know, we do it the same way? And we spent much more money. We have to equalize. But while the United States gets nothing back, so they get their money back. It's a loan. We just give our money. And we had a deal based on rare earth and things, but they broke that deal. But they broke it 2 days ago. We had a deal because I said, we're spending $350 billion, and Europe gets their money back in the form of a loan, and we don't. We're just giving the money hand over fist. That's the Biden administration for you. But they're no longer dealing with the same United States as they were dealing with a few months ago. Why didn't crooked Joe Biden demand equalization, in that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us, and that there's a very big, beautiful ocean, a separation. This is, you know, we're helping Europe. We're trying to help Europe. On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money that we sent them is missing. They don't know where the money is. He said, well, we don't know where half of it is. That's great, wonderful. He refuses to have elections. It's low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh, no, his polls are good. Give me a break. Every city is being demolished. They look like a demolition site, every single one of them. And the only thing he was really good at was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played him like a fiddle. That's an expression we use, Yasser, to say that he's pretty easy, pretty easy. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast, or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast, because that war is going in the wrong direction. In the meantime, we're successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something all admit that only Trump is going to be able to do in the Trump administration. We're going to be able to do it. I think Putin even admitted that. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably maybe he wants to keep the gravy train going. I don't know what's the problem, but he hasn't been able. He's very upset that he wasn't invited. He could have come if he wanted to, but that he wasn't invited to Saudi Arabia. But he's been working for 3 years. There's never been even meetings or phone calls to stop this war. It's a horrible thing. I figure Russia's lost 900,000 soldiers. I think that Ukraine's lost probably 700,000. And it's a terrible thing. You'll see bodies and body parts all over the field, all over. We see them very accurately through satellites. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions of people have unnecessarily died. And you can't bring a war to an end if you don't talk to both sides. You got to talk. They haven't been talking for 3 years. So we hope to see a ceasefire soon and to reestablish stability in Europe and the Middle East. Thank you very much. And as I've said before, it's my hope that my greatest legacy will be as a peacemaker and a unifier. That would be a great legacy. So in conclusion, the golden age of America is upon us, and I'm inviting everyone here today and every citizen across our land to take part in the most extraordinary period of peace, prosperity, growth, innovation, wealth creation, and expansion the world has ever seen. We're on our way. I mean, everyone's talking about us. 3 weeks. We're in there for a couple of days more than 3 weeks. And everyone's talking about it. You have to see the crowds of people outside. It's pretty amazing what's happening. We're on the verge of soaring markets, surging incomes, booming production, groundbreaking technologies, thrilling discoveries, and a quantum leap in the quality of life. Absolutely a quantum leap. One day, very soon, our country will have the greatest economy in the history of the world because we once again have a president who puts America first, and we put America first, and your country should put your country first. But in the end, we want America first, and when it's all beautiful, which it's going to be pretty soon, we want to help other countries, and you want to help other countries. But, you know, I tell your leaders, and some of the leaders are in this room right now, you got to put your country first. Whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's something else, you got to put your country first. But we're going to have plenty left over to help others also. As long as you invest in America, build in America, and hire in America, that means that I'm fighting for you.
So this is our Flippy 3. Flippy 3 is actually twice as fast. I
think somebody said they're going to ask questions, and I didn't say, gee, what are the questions like Biden does. I say, just ask, it doesn't matter. You ask a question and I give an answer. So I think, Richard, you're going to come up and you're going to give me some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Please, a round of applause for the President of the United States of America. Thank you. Mr. President, thank you for accepting to take a few questions. 20 years ago, I don't know if you will remember, we were under the same roof in Orlando, and you were delivering an amazing speech in front of 3,000 sales reps, giving them the best advice to be successful. So what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
Well, I think it was watching my father. You know, my father was a very hard worker, and he just worked hard. And he was very smart. He had good genetics. His brother was the longest-serving professor in the history of MIT, Dr. John Trump. And my father was every bit as smart. But my father had to work. He was older, and he put his brother through school. In fact, he once said, boy, I put him through so much school. He had 3 different degrees. And they asked him to stay on at MIT. But my father was the same ilk. And I noticed that my father was a happy man. And what he did is he worked. He just worked all the time. He worked. And he loved it. And really, I think the best piece of advice I got from that is you have to love what you do. And if you love what you do, you're going to have a happy life. If you don't, I mean, I see so many people, they're in businesses that they don't want to be in. They're in businesses that, you know, they're bored in or they're not good at. They don't have a natural ability at it. There is such a thing as natural ability, whether it's sports or acting or anything else. I mean, some people have an ability for something. Try and find that ability. But you have to love what you do. If you love what you do, you're going to be, at least you have a good chance of being successful.
Mr. President, it's almost time for an early dinner. So if you are throwing a dinner party and you can invite 3 fascinating guests, living or dead, who would you bring?
Well, they're all sitting right in the front row. Yes, sir. Are you ready? Mohammed, are you ready? Steve Witkoff, and we have the most important person, at least until the World Cup is over, is here. Johnny, stand up. He gave the United States the World Cup. Johnny, thank you very much. I didn't know you were here. That's very good. He's the king of soccer. That's not bad. And you've done a fantastic job. You know, but it's very interesting. When I was president, I got the World Cup, and I got all of the, you know, we have this 250 anniversary, so that fell in this administration. That's a big deal, 250 years. But we have all of these things happening, and I also got the Olympics. And I was called by the mayor of Los Angeles, sir, would you call up the Olympic Committee, because It was at that time President Obama will not take their phone call, and we're going to get the Olympics in Los Angeles. And by the way, they've recommitted to Los Angeles at a level that, you know, I was very worried about that. And they've, the opposite, you know, somebody could have said, well, we're going to do it someplace else, until they have actually recommitted. They're going to make it bigger and better than ever. So I want to let you know that. But I had the Olympics. So I got the Olympics, I got the World Cup, and I said, and the 250, but that one I didn't get. But it was there, it was in this term. And I ran an election, and we did fantastic in 2016. We did much better, millions and millions, tens of millions, but millions and millions of votes better. And bad things happened, and I didn't get that one. And I said, you know, when I originally signed the Olympics, I said, I won't be able to even be president. And I got the Olympics, because if I didn't, when I spoke with the people, the organizing committee and the people in different parts of the world, they asked me to do it because the president wouldn't do it. I was president-elect, and I gave them a talk. I couldn't get them off the phone. They were starving for love. And the bottom line, they gave us the Olympics. And I said, you know, isn't it sad I won't be president? Then we had the election result, and now I'm president for the Olympics and for the World Cup. So I'm very happy about that, Johnny. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll be there. I promise I'll be there.
And by the way, Mr. President, backstage you have a gift from Johnny. He gave us the first ball with your name, which will be played for the World Cup in America.
It's going to be great. Thank you, Johnny, very much.
I doubt that any day you will take a sabbatical year, but if you could take a sabbatical year, Mr. President, what unconventional thing would you do?
What was the word?
Sabbatical. You don't work for 1 year.
I thought you said Sabbath. It's a big difference. It's almost the opposite when you think about it, right? I think what I do is, look, what I'm doing now is the most exciting job in the world. It's a hard job, not an easy job. It's a nasty job. It could be a lot easier with, you know, I think that the news media has to straighten themselves out, because people are getting it. You know, they're losing tremendous popularity, and they've lost their prestige, and they've lost their credibility. And I think it's a very important thing, the news media, but I think they have to straighten themselves out, because the people are going around them now. They have so many different things with, like Elon with X, which was a big thing, and we have Truth, which has been fantastic, and we have so many other things that you don't really need traditional. But I will tell you that there is just nothing I could do to enjoy my life, whether it's that or anything else that you'd ask, because this is the ultimate. I mean, I had to make a big decision, and it was a very risky decision, because if I would have lost, my life would have been a much different life. It would have been a very nasty life. They were going after me at levels that nobody's ever seen before. Not Andrew Jackson, not Abraham Lincoln. You know, the historians say that the president that was treated the worst by far by the media and overall was Andrew Jackson. In fact, his wife died of heartbreak. They were treated really rough. And Abraham Lincoln was second, but he had a civil war, you know, you can understand that. But nobody was treated like me, nobody. And I will tell you, you learn a lot about yourself. But there's nothing I'd rather do. I had to make a decision, do I do this? Because if I lost, it would have been very, very bad. It was dangerous, actually, very dangerous in so many different ways. And I decided to do it, and I said, I have to win, because if I don't win, I spoke to a friend of mine the other night, he said, you know, if you lost, it would have been it was actually Sean Hannity just before we did the interview last night. He said, boy, if you would have lost, you would have had a tough life. You would have had a very tough life. So there was a certain amount of courage involved in this decision to run, and it's a great honor to win by this much, to win all 7 swing states, the popular vote. Popular vote doesn't get won that much by Republicans for whatever reason. I think that's changing because, again, we're the party of common sense, and they're the party of some real bad things.
And I think they'll change. I think they have to. So you got to admit, he'd have been screwed. If he wouldn't have won, it would have been bad. He probably would have been in jail. If he wouldn't have won, yeah, I don't know what would have happened to this dude. But it's a good point. Definitely a good point. What would have happened to this guy if he would have never been able to gain power? You know, it could have been bad. Could have been bad.
Change. It would be wonderful. I'm going to be having lunch with some of the Democrats next week, and it would be wonderful if we could work together. I think working together would be great. But they have to change. You can't get elected on the programs that they want, and that's really what America wants to see. So there's nothing I'd rather do than what I'm doing right now.
When we started this conference, Mr. President, when we started this conference, Yasser and I, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince told us, I want that to be the place where people will come to understand where to invest in terms of geographies and sector. So what is the best investment you have made in your personal growth, Mr. President?
Well, I was involved in real estate from, most of my life, and was, guys like Witkoff will tell you I was really good at it, and I was successful at it, very successful at it. I've been involved in things prior to being president, but during the last 4 years, I followed sort of the trends, and I've made a lot of money with following some of these trends.
That's the big thing I'm talking about in terms of paying attention, right? Following the trends and paying attention. What's coming, what's not coming, everybody's got to dodge, move, duck, know what's coming and pay attention. You can make a lot of money. And that's what I'm here for. I want to discover this with you guys. That is my goal.
And it's, again, it's something that you top, but always pretty much at the top. But it was losing that position, and I think losing it rapidly. This last administration, look, I don't want to be, I wish I could say, I wouldn't have run. If I thought Biden was doing a good job, if I thought I wouldn't have run. Because as I said, it was very dangerous to run in a lot of ways. In fact, my ear will show that when you look at it closely. My ear, I have that throbbing feeling every once in a while, but it was dangerous in a lot of different ways. But he was so bad that I had no choice but to do it. If I thought he was doing a great job, I wouldn't have run, and I would be very happy. I actually wanted him to do a good job. I was saying, do this, do that. I'm telling them, do things. They should have done what I said. And but I would have been very happy not to have run, and frankly to have seen somebody do a good job. But our country was going to hell, and I really sort of had to run.
If you were a historical ruler, would you prefer to rule during war or peace?
Well, I want to be, again, a peacemaker, and I want to keep us out of war. But sometimes to do that, you have to have a very strong country. You have to have a very strong military. And as I said, we have a much stronger military than anyone would know. We have the best equipment. And I bought a lot of it. I rebuilt our military in the first 4 years. I rebuilt it. We gave a lot of it away to Afghanistan, to the Taliban, stupidly, but that's a very small amount relative. It was billions and billions, but it's still a very small amount relatively to what we built. But I largely rebuilt our military. Now I'm going to have to do it again because so much has been given away, so much has been treated so badly. But to keep peace, you really have to, I have a thing, strength through, and I mean it, you really have it. You have strength, and you need the strength, but it's really peace through strength, because without the strength, it's going to be very hard to have peace, because you're going to be taken over, bad things are going to happen, so you really want to have peace through strength, and that's where I've done it. Having strength, having power in that sense to protect yourself and your people is a very important thing.
Before, it's going to be curious to see if he settles up this war in Ukraine and Russia, who's going to come knocking again just to be the squeaky wheel, so to speak, right? Who's going to be the squeaky wheel? And hopefully it's not Iraq, Iran, but I can see them being pretty pissed off that, if United States becomes even more of a superpower because it becomes self-reliant on energy and stuff like that, that's probably not on their agenda. For everybody.
Hopefully you don't have to use that power. I will tell you, I was dealing with President Putin very successfully on denuclearization. We were talking about it very seriously, and then COVID came and lots of things came, and we had also talked to China about it. Now, Russia and us have the biggest nuclear by far. China is not close, but they will be close. In 3 or 4 years or 5 years, they'll be equal. But we were going to talk to China, and I spoke to President Xi about it very successfully. I think we were going to denuclearize it. We had to get the smaller nuclear powers, of which there are 4, 3 maybe, but 4 probably, to do something. We would have been able to do that. But I was having very strong talks with President Putin about denuclearization. And, you know, if you're president, you get presentations about what we're building, what we're having, the power of weapons, the power of many things besides weapons per se. What I saw, the power of nuclear weapons, and we can never let that happen. If that happens, the ball game will be.
Kind of the point. He kind of repeats himself, which I understand why. You know, just says it over and over again. So I just saw this as Elon Musk and, you know, what's going on with his Tesla stuff and stocks, just trying to pay attention again. Let's see what happens.
Just makes electric cars and has done nothing to deserve these evil attacks. You just rescued 2 astronauts that have been in space for 286 days. They were only supposed to be there 8. You helped the people in North Carolina, Tennessee, California. You have, I think, the most creative and innovative car on the market. You created Starlink for communications that's used by hundreds of countries. You're working on helping the blind see and all of these other things. Is it really come down to the basic, you're aligned with President Donald Trump, who also is a friend of mine, and that you have identified well over $100 billion of waste, fraud, abuse that our federal government never should have been spending? Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, it turns out when you take away people's, you know, the money they're receiving fraudulently, they get very upset, and they basically want to kill me because I'm stopping their fraud, and they want to hurt Tesla because we're stopping this terrible waste and corruption in the government. And well, I guess they're bad people. Bad people will do bad things.
Well, I know that overall, you know, financially, in the end, yes, they can hurt you, but the people that they'll end up hurting are the people that work in your dealerships that may risk losing their job. The people that they may end up hurting are the people that work on the line and build the Teslas. They're going to be the ones hurt. And that to me is despicable on their part, just because they might have a political difference or perceived political difference. Let me ask you this, because I think this is pretty important. You know, the average American makes $66,000 a year. We're close to $40,000 in debt. You said to me in our last interview, we won't have a country unless we fix it now. Can you explain why this is so important that we identify all this waste?
Yes, the government the government waste and fraud is so high that it's causing a $2 trillion annual deficit. So that's $2,000 billion of waste and fraud that's happening. And the cost of our debt has gotten so high that just the interest payments on the debt exceed the entire military budget. And it was just growing out of control. So the country was going bankrupt. It's just, you know, a country is no different from a person. If a country overspends and doesn't spend wisely, just like a person, a country will go bankrupt. So the reason I'm here is because I'm very worried about America going bankrupt due to the corruption and waste. And if we don't do something about it, the ship of America is going to sink. And we're all on that ship. You know, and this may be a message to, you know, people out there who have, you know, are wealthy, have a lot of means, or control companies. It's like, just remember, we're all in ship America here. Your company is not going to exist if the ship of America sinks. And we should do everything we possibly can to ensure that America is strong for far into the future.
And for doing that, we're all sunk. And for doing that, you should not have your company be a victim of domestic terrorism. If I may, one last question. You know, when I interviewed you and President Trump together, one of the questions I asked both of you was, are you aware that there are groups that want to separate you, groups that would like to divide you, groups that would like to see you not work together? I feel it's stronger than it's ever been. Do you get the same sense?
I think they're getting desperate because, I mean, the reason we're seeing this extreme amount of hatred and violence is because we're actually succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste. If we weren't succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste, they wouldn't care. but we are succeeding. Thanks. Without President Trump, this would be impossible. So I'd just like to say, it's only possible with this president. And we've got this narrow window of opportunity with a House, Senate, and a popular vote, and really we're just implementing the will of the people. And we've got this window where we can finally take corrective action. We can fix the government, fix the country, and create a great future. And again, that's only possible because of President Trump. I can't say enough good things about him.
I'm kind of supportive too. I'm pretty well known for my support of him.
Yeah.
As you might know, but for good reason, and for all the reasons you're saying. I want to save our country. We can't rob from our kids and grandkids, and we can't put all that debt on them. And you're right, none of us will have any business opportunities because there won't be any money, there won't be any freedom, there won't be an economy. Thank you for what you did today. I know I speak for a lot of people when I say that. And on the other side of it, your company being a victim of domestic terrorism, I can't say that I'm sorry enough. We need to get these people that are responsible for this, and you should not have to live through that. Your workers should not have to live through that. Your company and this country should not have to live through that. And I hope we get to the bottom of it.
Thank you.
And by the way, I'm excited about my S-Plaid. It's the best car I've ever driven, by far.
It's a great car. It's what I drive actually every day. It's a great car.
Is that right?
I mean,
kind of same old thing there. Trying to promote, don't do that. He's doing good things. Crypto was the big next one.
Now is the co-CEO of Kraken, Arjun Sethi. Kraken is a US-based cryptocurrency exchange. Arjun, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Give us a sense of the state of play in terms of regulation. How would you characterize business in the industry today?
Maria, thanks for having me. Well, the industry's pretty excited. I think that's probably the best way to put it, is that last year, in January of 2024, price of Bitcoin was around $40,000. Today it's around 80. So you have this, step function continued growth in the ecosystem. And, companies like ourselves, Kraken, one of the earliest crypto exchanges, secure from day one. We didn't raise as much capital, and we're kind of serving the clients here in the United States first and regulated here. We're really excited to see the changes that are happening in the U.S. By the Trump administration that are pro-crypto, pro-trade, pro-innovation, and pro-U.S.
You've got to get the the infrastructure of financial services around you to create the volume that you need, right? Assess for us the volume of transactions on Kraken and who is transacting.
Yeah, so our market is essentially professional traders, and if you look at professional traders, not in crypto but everywhere else worldwide, they all think and act the same, they behave the same, and they build stability to the market. So last year alone for us, we were just shy over $500 billion in transactional volume, and that's roughly also our clients have about $50 billion in assets here in the U.S. And all these folks, what they're really doing at the end of the day is very similar to how you think about traditional commodities, traditional equities. And so when we say the word digital tokens, digital currencies, and digital commodities.
Arjun, the House Financial Services Committee holding a hearing on how to navigate the digital payment system. That includes the development of a federal framework for payment stablecoins while examining the consequences of a U.S. central bank digital currency. I spoke with the chairman, French Hill, on this program about the importance of stablecoin regulation for foreign markets. I want to get your take on what he said. Here he is, French Hill.
In a big developed country like the United States, we already have many, many ways to instantaneously pay for things. And this wouldn't be top of mind, but it will be lower cost in foreign markets. You have, you reduce the cost of foreign exchange, you reduce the cost of fees across borders. And so in some countries where they have an unstable currency, a weak banking system, not a very good payment system, a smartphone app with a digital wallet with a dollar-backed stablecoin is a good way, even at retail, to do a transaction.
Arjun, your thoughts. The SEC is considering scrapping regulations proposed under the Biden administration, which would have required stricter standards for investment advisors holding digital assets, Arjun. Kraken, I know, was one of those crypto agencies, one of the several crypto agencies whose SEC investigations were dismissed.
Yeah, look, the way we look at the industry today is that we are focused on moving forward. So we're a U.S. regulated exchange. The rules of the road are being paved. And more importantly, when you take a look at the stable coin legislation or the market structure bill that everyone's focused on, it gives a level playing field. And so with that level playing field, we can continue to innovate. And so, to all of these comments that are related to, what does a stable coin do? It brings stability to the market. What is the one thing all customers want? They want stability,
right.
U.S. reserve currency, and that is the trust token worldwide. And so if you are living in any emerging market, in any of the developed markets, the currency that you care about is pegged to the dollar. And so when we have the stability and rules of the road in the ecosystem, our exchange flourishes, U.S. customers flourish, and we can continue to focus on innovation around what crypto brings to all of us.
All right.
They were talking about some reports that crypto could go up to 200,000. So they're saying it's going to double, literally double crypto. I kind of wish that I was, in it early on, but I don't know about that. That's risky. $100,000, or I guess it's 80,000, whatever it is now, is kind of risky. Risky. Okay, let's see what he says here.
Wow. Which was worse, the mess you found in Twitter or the mess you found in the federal government?
Well, it's hard to compete with the federal government. It is worse than I expected, but on the plus side, that means there's more opportunity for improvement. So look, if you look on the bright side, there's actually a lot of opportunity for improvement in federal government expenditures because it's so bad. If it was a well-run ship, it would be very difficult to improve. So now it's like, if people say, well, how do you figure out how to save money in the federal government? Well, it's like being in a room where the walls, the roof, and the floor are all targets. So you shoot in any direction,
and you're
you
gonna
can't
win.
miss.
Wow.
Again, I'm sure you would agree.
So a lot of folks have talked about like
you can't miss.
You can't miss.
Yeah, just go any direction.
Things like $2 million for sex change surgeries in Guatemala.
An essential.
Tell us about computer licenses in government agencies.
Yeah. So most of what Doge is finding, you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes. Okay, it's very obvious, basic stuff. Every government department, I say every because we've not yet found a single exception. There are far too many software licenses and media subscriptions, meaning many more software licenses and media subscriptions than there are humans in the department. We found entire situations of software licenses or media subscriptions where there were 0 logins.
Wow.
So it had
and yet we were paying for it.
Yes, so the government was paying for thousands of licenses of software or media subscriptions, and no one had ever logged in even once. We found that there are twice as many credit cards as there are humans.
And
I still don't have a good explanation for why this is the case. And these are $10,000 limit cards. So it's a lot of money. Look, I think it's mostly, if you say, look, what's the waste to fraud ratio?
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's like 80% waste, 20% fraud. But you do have these sort of gray areas.
Yep.
So,
Example
would be, so we saw a lot of payments going out of Treasury that had no payment code and no explanation for the payment. And then we'd try to figure out what that payment is, and we'd see that, okay, that contract was supposed to be shut off, but someone forgot to shut off. For example, the $1.9 billion given to Stacey Abrams, a fake NGO.
Utter insanity.
Allegedly, it was for environmentally friendly appliances or something, and they've given like 100 appliances.
Same old things, doing a great job, cutting back. I found this next one. Oh, there it is. Hold on just a second. Oh, what happened? Give me just a second. Okay, so there we go.
Is the U.S. economy on the verge of a recession in 2025? And if this recession happens, what's going to happen to home prices and stock prices? And just how high could the unemployment rate go? In this video, I'm going to give you all the update on the economic indicators and what's happening with Trump's presidency so you can be informed on where the economy is heading. And the first thing to understand is that a lot of corporations are giving big warnings. For instance, Delta just issued a big warning on the economy. Meanwhile, United Airlines just slashed its forecast, with Dollar General saying that consumers are cash-strapped, and you have Target issuing a rough first quarter profit warning as well. With a big indicator that's scaring me on the economy right now being job openings. For instance, you can see data from Indeed.com is showing an almost 40% contraction in job openings over the last 2.5 years, and down almost 10% year over year. And at the same time, continued unemployment claims are rising. We now have almost 2 million continuing unemployment claims. This figure keeps increasing gradually and suggests it's becoming harder and harder for people who have lost their job to find a new job. And one thing that concerns me about the current state of the situation is what the Donald Trump presidency is doing right now. Because the Trump presidency is kicking out the legs of the economy, particularly government spending and particularly immigration. Those were the two main factors that were propping up the economy.
So I just want to say, make sure we all understand there has to be a correction. Something has to fall for it to be corrected. I can't even say it. So yeah, they literally are firing how many people in the federal government, exist or non-existent, right? There's going to be some people in there that's going to exist. So they're going to lose their jobs. So what's that going to create? Maybe some housing, maybe some, people are going to do unemployment. I mean, I agree with that, but at the end of the day, don't be fearful because it has to reset. Everything has to come back down.
Over the last 2.5 years, the fact that our debt to GDP ratio is now up to 121%. Well, Trump has been pretty insistent on scaling back federal spending, and they're doing lots and lots of layoffs. Over 200,000 federal workers have been laid off already, and now we're also seeing many federal contractors also get laid off from their jobs, and this is contributing to economic weakness and an economic slowdown. For instance, United Airlines just said that government travel is down 50%, which has been a pretty material impact in the short term on their business. And anecdotally, folks, I can tell you, down here in Florida, I am hearing lots of stories of people who moved down here during the pandemic who either worked for the government or were a contractor for the...
Again, how many of those people were real? Okay. And then also, it's going to happen. They're not spending as much money, period. So, yeah, wasteful. Everybody's terrified to get cut in the federal government side. So they're not going to spend that money like they did in the past. And again, it's just kind of the same thing. Even with the flights and all that stuff, they're going to have to shut some down, things, recession equals correction. So everybody's getting fearful. Man, the real estate market has to correct. There has to be a crash for it to correct. Why else would you pay $400,000 for a $100,000 house? Right? I mean, it makes sense. But you got to be paying attention to what's going on. Let's see what it says.
Government, and they're now getting laid off or they're being reassigned. This is a trend that I keep hearing and running into on the ground here in Florida. And so the message here is that the layoffs from the Trump administration and DOGE, they are starting to have an impact on the economy. Now, the other side to this equation that I think is causing this economic slowdown is immigration. For instance, I want you folks to check this data out from the U.S. Customs and Border tracking the Southwest land border encounters by month. How many people are being apprehended by Border Patrol? And what do you see? In February 2025, there was only 12,000 enforcement encounters at the southern border, whereas a year ago there was 189,000. So literally there's been a 94% reduction in inbound immigration into the US year over year since Trump took office. Now, from an economic perspective, simply, what does that mean? That means less job growth. There's going to be less growth in non-farm payrolls, and we might even see some of those immigrants leave the country, which could lower consumer spending on the margins. And there was actually a really interesting study by John Burns Real Estate Consulting on the impact of immigration on rental housing demand in America. They came out with this study last year, and they found that slowing immigration could lower the number of renters entering the market.
I will say that there are some landlords that I know personally that they only lease or do like lease to own to immigrants. That's like their whole setup. They do that all the time. It's highly successful. You know, you don't need a social security card to rent a property by any means. And, you know, you wouldn't ask that anyway, but their whole setup is there's, you know, they happen to have a background. Their second language is English, not, you know, first language is Spanish kind of thing. So they'll come in, their whole setup, their whole basis is based on renting to lease long-term to the immigrant style setup. And that's just, that's what they're comfortable with. That's just what they do. So I have seen that, so that I could see that how, yeah, it'll, you know, people stop, you know, they move out or whatever, or they get deported, they're gone, you know. But that's also, you know, what does that mean for that renter? If they don't pay their rent, then that maybe they had that, you know, mortgage to that landlord for 10 years. Well, that landlord gets that property back. So I don't know, you know, that's going to be interesting to see the kind of predicament. Definitely.
Decreasing occupancy rates and cooling the strength in absorptions. In particular, they found that from 2022 to 2024, immigration was responsible for all of the net 1 million growth in renter households in the U.S. Let me repeat that, folks. John Burns Consulting found that over the 2 years from 2022 to 2024, the only growth that came in renter demand in America was from immigration. So now that immigration is going potentially to zero or maybe even negative in some pockets of the country, what is that going to do to demand for apartments and single-family homes to rent? Well, obviously, it's going to drop. Rents are likely to decline in many of these markets, and that could cause a knock-on effect of a worsening economic downturn as housing inventory rises and home prices drop. Now, let's do a quick little
Again, whoop, there you go. Again, that's a good thing. It needs to correct. It needs to correct. Correct? It needs to crash. Nobody can afford $400,000 house in a one bedroom. It's just not going to happen. So it's, you know, if they're smart, they'll start. And like I said, I'm already getting notifications now how everything's dropping on Zillow. So if the landlords are smart, they're going to start cutting back now. You better do it before April, because then the tariffs all fully come into function, I guess, April 2nd. So it's, you know, and like I said, I appreciate you guys listening in. There's probably, you know, about 2 hours is enough for me. I usually try to do between 10 and 12. If you guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Again, I appreciate you guys listening in.